Number one for today, guys, we're gonna start off with basically something that's very easy to do that you can actually implement today using a charger that is on brand. Now, what I mean by this is I'm not gonna encourage you actually, weirdly enough, to go buy an Apple charger. For me personally, I'm just going to suggest that you guys as consumers and people watching this video, that you think about how you purchase accessories for your iPhone very diligently. And that doesn't mean spending a fortune, it just means looking at brand names and buying things that are actually good for your iPhone. I would stay away from chargers, basically cords and charger boxes that are not necessarily a known brand. Now, for a lot of you, I might say the name brand Anker, Belkin, OtterBox, and Apple, and some of those might ring a bell, some of them may not. That is okay. So these are gonna be some of the biggest brand names in terms of off-brand, on-brand, in my opinion, hybrid brands that kind of look out for the safety and health of your battery, that are also known and well enough to actually buy and purchase. A lot of these are actually gonna be very affordable. Anker has chargers starting out at I think $15 or $20, which is basically, I bet, about 30 to 50% off of what an Apple charger might be. Anker is gonna be the most affordable, then Belkin, then OtterBox, then Apple, with Belkin and OtterBox kind of tying for price. So if you guys are similar to me, where you basically want the best bang for your buck and not to spend a fortune, and you also want the most innovation possible, that's gonna be Anker hands down. Anker does this really cool thing where they actually make these very powerful charging boxes that are actually about half or a quarter of the size of the Apple ones. You can get a 25-watt Anker USB Type-C fast charger for like $20 that hooks up to your iPhone and is actually a perfect contributor. The thing you're gonna wanna do is stay away from chargers that you've never heard the brand of. The best way I like to look at it, guys, is if you're looking at a Chinese or Japanese or some foreign type of charger on Amazon, what I would do is Google the name and see how much you can find out about it. For me personally, Anker, you'll probably find quite a bit of information and see that it's kind of sold everywhere. And now Anker is actually sold at Best Buy, which is one of the biggest reasons why I say that it's worth a try, and it's definitely worth trusting. What I usually recommend people do is look at the reviews on Amazon and see really what we're looking at in terms of stability and reliability. Believe it or not, there are some reviews you can actually read where the charger just doesn't work well or causes the phone to get really hot or things like that. Warmth within charging is necessary and normal, but if it gets hot to the point where people saying, you know, it's frying their hand or they're getting a third-degree burn, that's where we'd want to take the step back. The reason why, and it brings me into number two kind of, is a more keyword to the whole video. So the reason why batteries degrade is going to be because of heat. Heat is basically ultimately the worst enemy of your iPhone battery, and there's a reason for this. The reason for this is that heat actually causes the actual battery to degrade. So a battery is a consumable and it goes through a certain amount of cycles. If you are on an iPhone 14 and below, that's when you are not actually able to see the battery cycles on your phone. I have an iPhone 16 Pro, so I'm actually able to see the battery cycles, and a battery cycles we're actually going from 0 to 100, or basically anything below 25 is kind of what Apple suggests, because a battery cycle is using your entire battery's capacity in a charge. And so number two is really staying away from heat, because if you don't do this, you can actually degrade your battery pretty quick. So if you are someone who lives in a very hot climate, or you are somebody who is noticing that your chargers are maybe having tons of heat when you do charge your phone, these are things to take a step back, maybe contact customer support. I would say if the phone is getting hot enough to where it either starts glitching or it gets hot enough to where you're like, I don't want to hold this, it's that hot, that's when we need to take a step back and look at what you're using to charge your phone. Number three is going to be turning on optimized battery charging. So right now, you guys can watch this video. I'm gonna actually, during number three right now, guide you exactly how to turn on optimized battery charging. So optimized battery charging, before we get into it, basically what it does is it optimizes your battery's charging for when you guys are charging overnight or when there's excessive charging, that the battery actually watches your routines. And then what happens is that when you get to a certain battery, so basically when you charge to a certain point, the battery actually stops/slows the charging, and then it actually saves it to go from 80 to 100% until right about when you need it. And this is a very important thing to think about, because if you guys are someone who lets your phone charge overnight, you're going to want to consider this, because what happens is overnight, your battery usually, if you don't have this turned on, will actually go straight to 100%, sit there for 6 to 8 hours, and this can actually contribute to battery degradation. Now, as far as this goes, one thing to consider is that if you guys are a sporadic charger kind of person, meaning that you charge your phone at different times throughout the day, this can actually kind of screw you over, and I'll get into that in just a second, so do not abandon the video, because you're not going to want to miss that. But basically, optimized battery charging is one of the best things you're gonna wanna do. So if you go into settings, I'll have this on the screen, settings, battery, battery health, and then if you click optimized charging, and then below that should be clean energy charging. So go ahead and turn that on. But if you are someone who doesn't charge your phone at the same time every day, the reason why optimized battery charging can be tough is that optimized battery charging learns from your charging behavior. For example, if you're someone who charges your phone sporadically, let's say you get home on a Friday night, you have plans to go out to happy hour at 8. Let's say you get home at 4:35, let's say you plug your phone right in at 6. The problem with optimized battery charging, if you charge it at 6 p.m., and it gets up to 80% by 7:30, instead of it going all the way up to 100%, it'll actually stick around at 80% until you use it, which then you don't have the extra 20%. So the best way to look at it is if you are a sporadic charger, be very careful with optimized battery charging. If you're a routine charger, optimized battery charging is the absolute way to go. Number 4 is basically, this is not necessarily a tip or a trick, but I just want to explain what battery cycles are. So if you guys are on an iPhone 15 or above, you have something called battery cycles on your phone. Let's do it together just so you guys know how to do it, and let's get in the rhythm of doing things as a team here. Is you can go into settings, the little gear icon, then go to battery, then battery health, and then from there you're gonna see battery cycle count. So according to apple.com, iPhone 14 and below will retain 80% of your battery's health for up to 500 battery cycles. With iPhone 15 and above, it's 1,000 battery cycles. So according to apple.com, I wanna be very clear about this, is the battery cycles on your phone is basically 25% and below, all the way up to 100%. I'm gonna put it on screen for you guys because I'm still a little confused, but what I've noticed on my phone is basically anything below 25% all the way up to 100% is a cycle. Because a cycle is basically how your battery degrades. Every time you do a cycle on your phone, it's technically taking and moving around the ions in the electrodes and things like that slightly to the point where it's over time causing an issue. But at the end of the day, we're gonna move into the real number 4, which is why I'm glad you guys stayed for the video, is going to be wireless charging versus wired charging. So basically, according to several different articles, wireless charging can produce more heat than wired charging. Why? Wireless charging produces more heat because apparently the watts and voltage that come from your wireless charger can't be absorbed into your iPhone as quickly and as efficiently as the wired charging. So unfortunately, that inefficiency causes more heat to be built up, which then attributes to heat building up on your iPhone. So at the end of the day, if you guys are someone who wired and wirelessly charges, and you're like, which one should I pick, Justin? I would say, for me personally, from my experience, until further notice and until I can make another video on the actual difference between wireless and wired charging, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it, but I will say that for me, I have noticed that when my phone wirelessly charges, it does get a little warmer. What I would consider doing if I were you guys, and this is something I also have to get back to you, so there's 3 things I'm getting back to you guys on, is if it depends on the wattage. So for me, I have a 25 watt wireless charger, Q2, which might be attributed to the heat. If you guys were to go get a standard wireless charger, like a 10 or a 15 watt, that might be the ticket. As you guys take away this information, there are some key things to really consider when it comes to batteries. So this is on Apple's website, and I'll kind of have this scrolling on the screen so you guys can follow along as I read it off. But if you guys go into your phone, you can go into settings, battery, battery health, and charging with iOS 16 or earlier, or later, of course. Basically, you can actually see if your iPhone's battery health is at 100%. There is also something key to consider here, is that if you guys are on an iPhone where the battery needs replacement, this is where it will actually show you that. But if it does say on this menu that your battery needs replacement, something to consider would actually be to take your iPhone into the Apple Store, make a Genius Bar appointment, and actually have your iPhone battery replaced. This can actually really significantly help you feel better about your phone usage. Like I said, if you are someone who's charging more than once a day. Batteries work in a very interesting way. So if you ever were to do research on how batteries operate, it's actually kind of a scientifically cool process. Lithium ion batteries, basically the charging process looks like this. There is something called a cathode, an anode, and an electrolyte. So charging process looks like this. When an iPhone is plugged in, electricity flows into the battery. This causes the lithium ions to move from the cathode, basically the positive electrode, to the anode, the negative electrode. The electrolyte, which is basically a liquid or gel inside the battery, allows the lithium ions to move through the separator, which prevents the anode and cathode from touching and short circuiting. That's the charging process. So that's basically just the whole process. The discharging process, when the phone is powered on, the process reverses. So follow along here. This is very interesting. So lithium ions move back from the anode to the cathode, creating an electric current. This current flows through the phone circuits, providing power to its components. So charge cycles and degradation. This is where the meat and potatoes really comes into play. Lithium ion batteries are not designed to hold a full charge indefinitely. We already knew that. They degrade over time, and that's just kind of the bottom line. Over time, the chemical reactions inside the battery cause a gradual decrease in capacity, meaning the battery can't store as much as it did when it was new. Apple estimates that their lithium ion batteries retain 80% of the original capacity for a certain amount of charge cycles. So this is extremely helpful to really understand how this works. This is a scientific process for how your battery degrades, and following these 4 steps we've talked about in the video today, you'll be able to really take away some of these strategies, put them to use today. One thing I recommend you guys do is, if you are overwhelmed and you're like, hey Justin, like, I know you're a tech guy, but I'm kind of, this is a lot, and this is a lot to implement into my life. And maybe you're like, I kind of don't care about my phone battery, but I do, and I'd like to have it for 2 or 3 years. What I'd really recommend doing if I were you guys is really not changing much, but I would start changing the very easy things to change today. So for example, go to your chargers, and if you have a charger that's from China and it's some weird brand, if you put it in the comment, I am happy to answer that and tell you guys what I think about the charger. So I would check that out. I would replace all your chargers. Anker has, I believe, a 15 and a 20 watt, 25 watt charger. These are both going to be fast chargers, because I know there's a lot of people in the world that just are really, really, really busy. So in terms of waiting on your phone to charge with like a 5 watt charger, that just doesn't work, and I respect that. I don't use any slow chargers. I literally don't. But I would just implement some of these strategies today. And if your phone is already below 100% battery health, something to consider is you don't have to let it go below 99 or 98 or 97. If you're like me and you're like, I want to get it to 100% or really not have it drop, implement some of these into your system now. And if it's not already turned on, I can't recommend it enough. Go in and turn on optimized battery charging right now, unless of course you are the sporadic charger and you're not willing to do that and you're not comfortable with that, which I totally respect. Anyways, guys, I will see you guys in the next video. I hope this was really valuable for you. I really can't wait to see your guys' comments, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.